everyone, welcome to the video. Today's video, I'm going to create something that is going to showcase how I like to start training a lot of the people I work with or a lot of the athletes I work with, and where I see kind of movement screening and assessments going in the future. So let's get started. Now, I've been assessing people ever since I started to become a coach almost 15 years ago, and I've used all different types of assessments to determine kind of movement efficiencies, how people move, where they need to improve, where their strengths are, and that's a great way to determine kind of how to prioritize your training. Now, historically with golfers, I've really used the TPI screen a lot to determine their movement efficiencies and see kind of their capabilities in relation to the golf swing. In the last couple of years, I've found another tool that I use, and that's kind of what I'm going to showcase today. And it's a way that we can still monitor movement and we can see improvements, and it's a great way to determine more than just using the TPI screen. So I know on the actual thumbnail it said better than the TPI screen. I'm going to show you today that I actually use both to kind of come to a better outcome than just using the TPI screen. I find that both together is going to give me the best evaluation to kind of determine where to start and where to go with the training. So let's get into the actual assessment and let's talk through kind of what it is. So here's the assessment that I'm talking about.
Okay, for the first one we have back flexion. So if you see here, I'm bending at the hips, bending at the spine, trying to get to close to 90 degrees. Now my score was around 110 degrees, so that's good. Now back extension, so trying to go the opposite direction, and here we're looking for about 25 degrees, and I'm going close to 30 degrees there. Now lateral flexion, tilting for our golfers, so tilting to the side, again, looking for about 25 degrees either direction, and I think I was close to around 30 each direction with these ones. So you can see here we're getting exact ranges of motion with every single screen. It's not just using our eyes, we're actually getting degrees. Next is the overhead squat. So this is obviously telling me a lot of things through my ankles, through my knees, through my hips, through my shoulders. After the squat, we have our overhead reverse lunge. So this is different than the overhead squat because we have a movable footprint. So the squat is a stationary footprint, but this is a harder challenge trying to maintain that club over top with a movable footprint, and it really shows how you do with stability. After the reverse lunge, we're going to go into posture angel, and if anybody's ever done the TPI screen, this is very similar to 90-90. It is a little bit different, but we're looking at external rotation at your shoulder, and can you maintain kind of the good posture while you do that with your head in alignment with your shoulders. After the posture angel, we have a balance challenge. For this assessment, it is eyes closed, and if you can see here, it's showing me kind of what's happening at your head from left to right, what's happening at your head forward and back, like am I moving forward and back? Are my shoulders moving or changing throughout? Are my hips changing throughout? And it's all based off the midline or where we calibrated at the start. So it is a very telling test, and it does show a lot more than just timing it or just looking by eye. And that's why I like using this as well as the TPI screen to really get the whole picture for my athletes. After that, we have vertical jump. This is assessing lower body power, and we do it on one leg each, which is great. And then the scoring. So I scored 84% on my assessment. There's an actual overall score, so that puts me in the good section. I have some places to improve. I can actually spin the body around and look at some of the problem areas. It gives me a breakdown of each drill, how I scored, and what kind of, it's a good kind of visual of where I need to improve or the things I can improve on. There's indexes, so balance index, flexibility, posture, stability, how symmetrical you are, and it gives you a good kind of indicator of where to look at in your training or where to start your training. And then it shows you your mobility and stability issues, and in what planes of motion you have those issues. So it's great for someone like me as a practitioner to understand your body. There is a section for range of motion as well, and you can see here I'm doing a back rotation, just similar to the seated trunk rotation for the TPI screen. So if you're looking at this and saying, I'm not getting all the same motions, here's another example, a hip internal rotation. There still is the ability to assess a lot of the same areas that you do assess with TPI. Now you can see the report that's generated when you complete this assessment or this screen. So there's details with every single assessment that you did. So you'll see kind of how you scored. You'll see a little bit more information about how it went and what was going on there in each drill. So maybe you were ahead from the center line, or you were back from the center line, or you broke it at your hips, or through your shoulders, or whatever. The next part you'll see is it's kind of a planar mapping. So it's understanding the different planes of motion that you struggle with, mobility and stability, which is very good for a practitioner to understand where to work with you.
I wanted to give an example of a TPI screen too, just because or at least a few of the drills, just because I went through all of that. So a couple of the drills that we do for TPI that are similar is single leg balance eyes closed is one of the drills that is used in the TPI screen. The overhead squat assessment is also another one that's used. We call this 90-90. It was called Posture Angel in that one. Some things that are different. So we like to actually determine hip internal and external rotation. But like I just showed you there with those range of motion tests, we can determine that still as well as a break off depending on where your deficiencies were. Another thing they do a lot is they get into golf posture. So in that assessment, I'm not really in golf posture at all. So determining kind of disassociation and everything. But when I combine both tests, it really gives me a whole landscape of the best way to kind of identify your limitations. So those are a few kind of similarities and a couple different things that are tested with the TPI screen that might not necessarily be in the movement screen that I just showed. But like I said, if you can combine both of those, then you really have a good understanding of the body, and you really are going to be able to come up with the appropriate plan to make sure that you become the best version of yourself. In conclusion, it's really important to obviously assess and determine a starting point before you decide where to take your training or what to do for training. Remember, these are only kind of assessing our movement abilities or how we can move. I mean, there's still other ways to assess kind of our capacities. So if I want to determine your strength, or if I want to determine kind of your endurance or power, there's other tests that I use on top of these to kind of figure that kind of stuff out. But this gives us a kind of an overall kind of display of what our functional movement abilities can be. And that's a great thing to understand when determining what exercises to select when going into training, and determine kind of how you're going to attack the off season. I mean, we got some snow where I am today. So if you're in Canada, then it's definitely time to really consider thinking about putting the clubs over here a little bit and thinking about the gym a little bit more, so that when we come back in the spring, we're our best version of ourselves. So if you're interested in doing something like this, or you want to come and get assessed by me, I've left my contact information in the actual notes of this video. But even if it's not by me, go and get assessed and go figure out where you are on your kind of fitness or exercise journey, and really have the best off season, or really come up with the best plan to make sure that you are efficient and productive during this off season, so that you come back next year better than you were before. That's why we like to say from average to elite. Thanks again for watching. Till the next one.